All right, here we have sine theta is equal to negative sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta. We're asked to solve for theta between 0 and 2 pi. Notice that here we've got a sine theta and a sine squared theta. And we also have this cosine squared. So a couple things. One, since we have both a sine and a sine squared, we're going to want to factor. So we'll want to get everything onto one side of the equation, leave the other side of the equation equal to 0. But also this cosine squared is messing things up. What we want to have happen, we want to be able to factor this, but we're going to need everything to be in terms of either sine or sine squared. So we want just sine. And so cosine squared, we have an identity for that. Cosine squared is equal to 1 minus sine squared. That comes from our Pythagorean identity, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So let's replace this cosine squared theta with 1 minus sine squared theta. And then everything else will stay the same. So plus equals sine theta. And then get everything onto one side and leave the other side equal to 0. So let's subtract sine theta from both sides. And so this is 0 on this side. On this side, let's rearrange some things. We've got a sine squared, negative sine squared minus sine squared. That's going to be negative 2 sine squared theta. And then we've got this minus sine theta. And then we've got plus 1. And now we're just about ready to factor this. I don't usually like to have a negative leading coefficient when I'm factoring. So let's multiply this whole thing by negative 1. So we get 0 on this side. Over here we get 2 sine squared theta plus sine theta minus 1. All right, now we can factor this. To get 2 sine squared theta, we need to multiply 2 sine theta and sine theta. And to get negative 1, we need 1 and a negative 1. And so we want the negative to go here so that when we multiply these, we get positive 2 sine theta. This would give us negative 1 sine theta. And they'd add to this positive 1 sine theta in the middle. All right, now we've got it factored. We can set each of the factors separately equal to 0 and solve from there. So 2 sine theta minus 1 equals 0, and sine theta plus 1 equals 0. So here if we add 1 to both sides and divide by 2, we get that sine theta is equal to 1/2. And over here, if we subtract 1 from both sides, we get sine theta equals negative 1. Now, we can turn to our unit circle and find everywhere that sine is either 1/2 or negative 1. So sine is 1/2 here at pi over 6, and here at 5 pi over 6, and sine is negative 1 here at 3 pi over 2. So our answer is going to be that theta is equal to pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, or 3 pi over 2. Those are the 3 answers for this one.